Hello. What you'll see in the next few moments is the Mark CR Woodward Vectrex Multicart. This particular multicart is the version 1.1 multicart, which was revised later on by Mark to work in the majority of the Vectrexes. The earlier version 1.0 was designed and made using a Vectrex that was previously debuzzed and was one of the serial numbers that was uncommon at the time. The result of the version 1.0 cartridge is that it wouldn't work in a majority of the Vectrexes that were already shipped. So this version 1.0 cart is what you'll be seeing in a moment, and is the revision that works in most of the Vectrexes out there. You'll notice when the menu comes up that it has Animaction and Art Master. And yes, this cart does have the extra RAM needed to run those games. So as you can see, it's an earliest version of a multicart that has both the RAM and is menu controlled. I think Mark did a pretty good job in designing this multicart. So right now the controls are operated using both keyboard buttons and on-screen joystick. Now what you might have just noticed is that the menu has dimmed out. I'm unsure whether this was a multicart problem with this particular version of the multicart, or whether it's just aging components. So to restore this, a reset is required. And yes, what you're seeing on the screen is the way that my particular Vectrex displays this menu. For the most part, this Vectrex that you're seeing the multicart used on works well with other games and has very little distortion. The fact that the menu goes off the screen right now might be an indication of an original design problem with the multicart, or it might just be an indication that the multicart was made on another uncommon Vectrex. And the way that it was made on the Vectrex may have led to the menu being displayed off-center. So I'll go ahead and scroll through the menu again one more time before selecting a game. And then the next page of the menu. I noticed that there's a 3D Mindstorm on this particular one. So it didn't look like he limited the games to any particular version of Mindstorm. You'll notice that on this page there are several Mindstorm revisions. I've found through playing them that the Mindstorm revisions shown on this page are different options. So one has rapid fire built into it, and there are some other options. There's also the test cart. So let's go ahead and select the test cart and let's just see what comes up. So using the joystick you can go right and left, up and down, and I'll just reset this menu again so you can see it more clearly. But using the joystick you can go up and down and right and left on the particular page that you're on. So let's go to the last page for a moment and select the test cart. So buttons 1 and 2 are previous and next page. Button 4 is the select. So the vectors are a little off on this one. I could use a little bit of screen rotation. I could probably use some alignment as well. Maybe a cap kit on this one soon to just fix some of its problems that it might have inherent from age. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. And yes, I've hooked a joystick up to the second port, and it does seem to work okay. As with other Vectrexes, you'll see that the joystick port for the second port is affected when I move the first port joystick. Very common thing to see. On this one, I do have, and it'll be hard for you to see it right now because of the lights that are out, but I do have the light pin hooked up to the second port at this time, and I'm not going to disconnect it just to connect a second joystick. So just running through a couple of quick tests on the test cart. As you'll notice, the B796 is the most current, or excuse me, the most common version of the Vectrex bias that you'll see, at least for the ones that were shipped. Intensity, not completely off. It was adjusted for another game. A game that had an intensity screen setting on it. So right now we'll go ahead and reset this one once again and go to one of the other games. First off, I'm going to display Animaction just to prove that yes, the RAM is in here and it does work. I'll go ahead and select Animaction, which is up on the top, as you can see now. Overall, after you get Mark's Multicart into a specific title, it does seem to work rather well. So just some simple actions at this point. So Animaction does work, definitely works anyway. So I'll go ahead and reset once more, and we'll go select Art Master. Okay, as far as ArtMaster goes, a quick check, and it does work well. So last, I'm just going to go through some of the alternate Mindstorm titles that are in the menu. So on to the last page. So let's go to the first Mindstorm that's shown. I'm not going to play through the whole set of levels, just a quick test to see what's different about this Mindstorm. So it doesn't seem to be much different as far as this one goes. Warping is still the same, movement is still the same, shooting is still the same. Let's go on to the next one. So last page, and then this version of Mindstorm. Ah, something a little different. I think most of us should recognize this particular version of Mindstorm, but I'll save the surprise as far as what it does. Okay, on to the next version. Okay, last page, last version of Mindstorm. And all these versions of Mindstorm are, of course, on the Multicart, not internal, or at least not internal to the Vectrex. The Multicart does work well in that sense. The default version of Mindstorm isn't displayed while the Multicart is in place. Now notice this one has rapid fire built right into it. And in fact, it is very sensitive for rapid fire, so if you hold it down, it'll release as many shots as is practical at the time anyway. So you have to use a light touch on the fire button if you want the shots to come out slowly. So that's really the big difference for this version of Mindstorm. We'll go and investigate one or two of the other titles on this Multicart, and then we'll be done. So once again, a quick run through of each title page. I'll list out the titles by text later on. Right now, just showing you the menu screen as I see it. So anything unusual? Not really. Just mostly the main titles that originally came with it. And in fact, there's only one 3D version here, which is 3D Mindstorm. You'll need the 3D imager to play it. It does work. I've played 3D Mindstorm with Mark Woodward's Multicart, and it works just fine. Everyone loves Space Wars. In fact, it's pretty appropriate, that I'm playing it right now, since California Extreme has just ended, and the person who had built Space Wars, at least for the arcades, had shown up and given his talk. Larry Rosenthal, that is. It was fun listening to him. So that's it for Space Wars. We'll go through one other title just as a check of how the Multicart works. Actually, even with the menu problems, that is, the menu dimming out over time if you just leave it sitting on the screen, even with that problem, I have to say I do like Mark's method of choosing the individual games. I'll let you know though that moving the joystick is rather touchy, so you do have to, let's say, be quick on the draw with movement and halting of movement in order to select the title correctly. And of course, the Vectrex game that actually got ported into an arcade classic, Cosmic Chasm. Not really going to play it right now, just to show you the screen. Well, that's it for Mark C.R. Woodward's Multicart, version 1.1. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a good night. One last thing before we go, though. Mark's Multicart does have the ability to pause and resume. So it has a pause switch on the cart itself. It also has a reset button on the cart as well, but it's of limited value, at least in my opinion. So you can actually pause if you don't move it around too much, like I've done. You can pause the whole menu system itself as well. And in fact, I can turn the Vectrex on right now, and the CPU is, at least has been paused at this point. The Multicart's pause switch is a little touchy, as you've already seen. I've had to reset the Vectrex a few times. Let's see if I can get it to pause just by itself, though. It does halt on the last instruction that it's on, or not exactly halt, but at least it stops the CPU from executing any more instructions. And when you take the pause switch back off, well, successfully take it back off anyway, it should work by restoring or continuing the game from where you left off. And let's try that one more time before we go. Okay, paused, and let's come off of pause. Oops. Well, it is a little touchy. I probably need to reinsert the multicart to get a little better connection. And in fact, I might go back and polish some of the edge connectors a little bit later, just to ensure that I have a good connection all of the time. In case you're wondering what the multicart actually looks like, see the links below for links to pictures of the multicart itself. The multicart did come uncased, that is as a bare board. I'm not sure if the original multicart, as it was shipped by Mark, came in a long plastic case or not. But the version that I had recently purchased definitely did not have a case to go with it, just the bare board. So one more try at pausing here. Okay, paused, and coming back from pause. You'll find that Juan Felix Mateo's cart with his pause button works, I suspect, in exactly the same manner. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. We're definitely at the end of this segment.